The moment she smiled at me across that wedding table, I had no idea I'd one day be sitting in a courtroom, watching her realize she wasn't getting what she expected. I'm 34 now, and I've owned my own electrical contracting business in Colorado for almost a decade. But none of that came easy. I didn't go to college. While most people my age were partying or switching majors, I was crawling through attics, pulling wire, and studying code books late at night. I started as an apprentice right after high school. The pay was barely above minimum wage and the hours were brutal. I'd work all day, then go home and study for licensing exams. 4 years later, I became a journeyman. 2 years after that, I earned my master electrician license. That's when things finally started to shift. My boss at the time was nearing retirement, and I saw an opportunity. At 26, I took a risk most people thought was insane. I bought his business. I scraped together everything I had for a down payment, financed the rest, and suddenly I wasn't just an electrician anymore. I was responsible for employees, clients, contracts, everything. That first year, I barely slept. Every job felt like it could make or break me. But slowly it worked. We built a solid reputation. Commercial work, industrial projects, emergency repairs. You name it. Now I've got a small team of 4 guys and we stay booked out most of the year. When things are good, I clear 6 figures. Around the same time, I made another move that paid off big. I bought a rundown commercial building right off the highway. The owner was desperate, so I got it way under market. It needed a lot of work, but I spent months fixing it up myself after hours. Now it's my shop and office, and I rent out half the space, which basically covers the mortgage. Last time I checked, it had more than tripled in value. Before all this, my life was simple. I had a modest 3-bedroom house I'd picked up at a foreclosure auction. It was a complete mess when I bought it. I'm talking ripped-out cabinets, busted floors, the works. But over a couple of years, I rebuilt it piece by piece. Nights, weekends, whenever I had time. By the end, it didn't even look like the same place. My truck was an old diesel Ford, nothing flashy, just reliable. I spent most weekends either working, fixing something, or heading up into the mountains to clear my head. I had a small circle of friends, mostly from my early days in the trade, but I wasn't exactly a social butterfly. And honestly, I liked it that way. Then I met her. It was spring 2016 at my friend Marcus's wedding. I was a groomsman, she was a bridesmaid. You already know how that usually goes. Her name was Melanie. She worked as a dental hygienist downtown. She was easy to talk to, laughed at my dumb jokes, and seemed genuinely interested. Not just polite, actually interested. We started talking during the reception, and by the end of the night, I had her number. The first few dates felt normal. Coffee, dinner, a movie. Nothing over the top. But I started noticing little things. She seemed impressed when she found out I owned my business. Asked a lot of questions about it. Same with the house. She mentioned how most guys she knew were still renting or living with roommates. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just noticing that I had my life together. And maybe she was. But looking back, I can't help wondering if that's when everything really started. By the time summer rolled around, we were basically inseparable. By fall, she was at my place more than her own. She still kept her apartment just in case, but let's be real, she had pretty much moved in. Clothes in my closet, toiletries in my bathroom, her coffee mugs slowly replacing mine. I didn't mind. It felt natural. There were small things I noticed, though. She never really offered to split groceries. Or utilities. If I paid for dinner, she didn't reach for her wallet. At first, I brushed it off. I made more money. It didn't feel worth arguing over. Looking back, maybe I should have paid closer attention. Then I met her parents. And that's when things started to feel off. Her dad, Richard, owned multiple car dealerships across the region. Her mom, Diane, didn't work but carried herself like she ran half the city. They had money, real money. The kind that comes with country club memberships and houses that look more like resorts. Their place sat up on a hill with a long, winding driveway and a fountain out front. The first time I pulled up in my work truck, I actually considered parking down the street. I didn't. I walked in wearing a button-down and slacks, thinking I looked decent. Diane gave me a once-over like I had shown up in a mechanic's uniform covered in grease. Richard's handshake was aggressive, like he was trying to prove something. Dinner started polite enough. But it didn't stay that way. So, he said, cutting into his steak, "You're in electrical work?" "Yeah," I said. "I run my own company." He nodded slowly. "Manual labor, then?" I just looked at him. "Part of it, sure. Also managing projects, contracts, employees." "And you plan to keep doing that long-term?" he interrupted. I smiled a little. "Yeah. It's worked out pretty well so far." Diane jumped in next. "Melanie mentioned you own a home." Is it a good area? There was a pause. One of those pauses where everyone knows exactly what's being asked. It's a solid neighborhood, I said. No gate. No security guard. But I've never had an issue. Melanie sat there quiet. She looked uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything. That stuck with me more than the questions. Still, I didn't let it derail things. Because with her, things felt good. Or at least I thought they did. I proposed in February. Nothing flashy. No big production. Just the two of us on a hike watching the sun come up over the valley. It was quiet. Real. She cried, said yes, hugged me like she meant it. For a few minutes, it felt perfect. Then wedding planning started. And everything changed. Her mom took over almost immediately. Venue, guest list, flowers, food, every detail had to meet her standards. Her dad kept making comments about how small my side of the wedding was going to look. They offered to pay for everything, which sounded generous, until it didn't. Because every gift came with conditions. It stopped feeling like our wedding and started feeling like a production I was being cast in. The biggest turning point happened about 2 months before the wedding. We were at their country club, because apparently that's where important conversations happen. Her dad ordered for the table without asking anyone. I remember thinking it was weird, but I let it go. Then halfway through dinner he dropped it. I spoke with our attorney, he said casually. We think it would be wise for you two to sign a prenuptial agreement. Melanie stiffened. Dad, we already talked about this. I know, he said, not even looking at her. But your mother and I have significant assets. Things that will eventually go to you. We need to make sure those stay protected. There it was. Diane smiled at me, all sweetness on the surface. It's just a formality. Nothing personal. Just protection for everyone involved. I kept eating. Didn't react right away. Because I already knew what they were really saying. They didn't trust me. To them, I was the guy who worked with his hands. The outsider. The risk. And honestly, that part didn't even bother me that much. Because here's the thing. I didn't want their money. Not then. Not ever. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already been thinking the exact same thing. Just not for the reasons they assumed. Because while they were worried about protecting their wealth, I was thinking about protecting mine. My business was growing fast. The building I bought had nearly tripled in value. My house, something I rebuilt from the ground up, was finally worth something real. Everything I had, I built myself. And I wasn't about to risk losing half of it if things ever went sideways. At the time, I told myself it was just being smart. But if I'm being honest, that was probably the first moment I seriously considered that things might go sideways. I hadn't brought up a prenup myself. Not because I didn't believe in it, but because I didn't want to look like I didn't trust her. So when her dad suggested it, I didn't push back. I just nodded. Honestly, I said, cutting into my food, that makes sense. I got a business, a building, my house. You've got family assets coming down the line. It's cleaner if we keep things separate. The table went quiet. Her dad blinked at me like I'd just ruined a script he'd been rehearsing. Her mom looked almost disappointed, like she was gearing up for a fight that never came. Melanie just stared at me. You want a prenup? I think it's fair, I said. We each keep what we came in with. Anything we build together, we share. If things ever go south, no one's fighting over who owns what. There was a pause. Then her dad leaned back, recovering. Exactly. I'm glad you're being reasonable. I'll have my lawyer review it, I added. And we should both have separate representation. Just to keep things clean. That part he didn't love. But he couldn't really argue without exposing what he was trying to do. So that's how it started. His lawyer sent over the first draft a couple weeks later. It was about a dozen pages of legal language, but the message was simple. Everything from her side, family money, future inheritance, gifts, was completely off limits. Always, fine. I didn't want any of that anyway. But as I kept reading, something felt off. Actually, more than off. It was one-sided. Completely. So I took it to my attorney, Elliot. He didn't even make it halfway through before he started laughing. I mean this respectfully, he said, shaking his head, but they're trying to lock this down for her and leaving you wide open. What do you mean? I asked. They've protected every dollar she might ever receive, he said. But you? Your business, your income, anything that grows during the marriage? That's all exposed. I frowned. So if my company grows, she could claim a portion of that, he said. Same with assets you acquire during the marriage, depending on how it's structured. That didn't sit right with me. Not even a little. I built everything I have from scratch, I said. I'm not risking that. Then we fix it, Elliot replied. And we did. We added protections for my business, the commercial property, my house, and any investments or retirement accounts I already had. Then Elliot suggested something that at the time just sounded thorough. Your business is going to keep generating income, he said. You'll probably buy more assets down the line. We need to make sure anything acquired with that income stays yours. I hesitated. Even if it's during the marriage? He nodded. Especially then. That's when things got tense. For the next 3 weeks, it turned into a back and forth between lawyers. Her side pushed hard for the increase in value of my business to count as marital property, which basically meant, if I worked harder, grew the company, expanded operations, half of that growth could belong to her. I shut that down immediately. Not happening, I told Elliot. He related bluntly. If your clients want full protection for their assets, my client gets the same. Otherwise, there is no agreement. That didn't go over well. At one point, her dad tried to apply pressure. He told Melanie that maybe they should reconsider the wedding if I wasn't willing to be reasonable. When she told me, I just shrugged. Tell him that's fine, I said. We can skip the whole thing and just go to the courthouse. That's when everything shifted. Melanie panicked. Suddenly, her parents were a lot more flexible. Funny how that works. In the end, we reached an agreement. Everything we each owned before the marriage stayed ours. Any inheritance or family money on her side stayed hers. And on my side, anything tied to my business, before or during the marriage, was defined as separate. That included income. And anything I bought using that income. That was the key part. Elliot made sure the language was airtight. He defined separate funds as any money generated from my company, since I owned it before the marriage. Which meant, technically, even money I earned during the marriage could still be considered separate as long as it came through the business. We also included appreciation. So if my house doubled in value, still mine. If the building increased, still mine. If I reinvested business profits into new assets, also mine. The wording was dense, legal, easy to gloss over if you weren't paying attention. But Elliot wasn't. And at the time, neither was I, honestly. I just wanted to protect what I'd built. I told myself it was fair, balanced, equal protection on both sides. But looking back now, I can't shake the feeling that we weren't just planning for a worst-case scenario. We were quietly preparing for it. Elliot actually hesitated when we finalized the wording. This is broad, he said, tapping the page. You're basically defining all future business income as separate. That's aggressive. That's the point, I told him. I'm betting on myself. The company's going to grow. I'm going to invest, buy more property. If this ever falls apart, I keep what I earn. He studied me for a second, then nodded. All right. Just make sure she understands what she's signing. That part didn't exactly happen. We were sitting in a conference room a few days later, both lawyers present. It should have felt serious. It didn't. Melanie was on her phone the entire time, texting her bridesmaids about dresses, flowers, stuff like that. Half listening at best. Her attorney, who, by the way, was recommended by her dad, kept trying to pull her back in. Miss Carter, he said carefully, this is a legally binding agreement. It will determine how assets are divided in the event of a divorce. You really should review these sections, especially the ones regarding business income and future acquisitions. She didn't even look up. I'm not marrying him for money, she said, scrolling. I have my own family money. This is just to make my parents relax. Can we just sign? I've got a fitting in like 40 minutes. Her lawyer glanced at me, almost apologetic. Please, he tried again, at least read the summary. She sighed, annoyed. How much is my dad paying you to make this complicated? Where do I sign? There it was. He gave up, pointed to the lines. We both signed. It got notarized, filed, and that was it. Done. Official. Enforceable. And completely ignored by her. We never talked about it again. The wedding itself, honestly felt like it wasn't mine. It was at a vineyard. Huge guest list. Around 250 people, most of whom I'd never met. Her parents paid for everything and made sure everyone knew it. During the speeches, her dad stood up, raised his glass, and talked for 5 minutes about how they spared no expense to give their daughter the wedding she deserved. He never mentioned me. Not once. I remember standing there thinking, this doesn't feel like the start of a partnership. But I pushed that thought down. Because at that point, what was I going to do? The first couple of years were fine. Not amazing. Not terrible. Just fine. She kept working at the dental office but started cutting back her hours. Random days off. Long weekends with her mom. spa trips, shopping. Sometimes she'd invite me, but I couldn't just disappear. I had a business to run. Then, somewhere around year 2, things started shifting. At first it was subtle. She always liked nice things, but it ramped up fast. New clothes every week. Boutiques I'd never even heard of. Hair appointments that cost more than my monthly utility bill. Regular manicures, like clockwork. She joined a high-end gym she barely used. Then traded in her car for a brand new Lexus SUV. Fully loaded. 6-year loan. I remember asking about it. I deserve something nice, she said. The payment alone was around $800 a month. At first I didn't push. She had her own income, around $45,000 a year. I figured, okay, if that's how she wants to spend it, fine. But then I started noticing something. Her income wasn't covering it. Not even close. Groceries were going on our joint card. Guess. Her car payment. Random shopping charges. All quietly pulling from the account I was funding. I didn't say anything right away. I told myself it was temporary. That she'd balance it out. But it kept happening. And then, it got worse. Because suddenly she started commenting on my spending. At some point, it stopped being about little differences, and started feeling like we were living in two completely different worlds. It showed up in small arguments at first. I'd buy new tools for the business, commercial-grade stuff that costs a lot up front but pays for itself fast. She'd watch me unload them and just shake her head. More tools? She'd say. How many do you actually need? I try to explain. This isn't random spending. This is how I make money. She'd shrug like it didn't matter. Then one of my work trucks hit the point where it just wasn't reliable anymore, over 250,000 miles. I replaced it with a used one in great condition. Smart purchase, good deal. She didn't see it that way. Why would you spend money on that? She asked. If you're buying a vehicle, why not just get something new? Because this is for work, I said. It does the job. That's what matters. She just rolled her eyes. But the real blow-up happened over something that, to me, was a no-brainer. I had a strong month. Landed a big contract. So I took an extra $5,000 and put it straight toward the principal on the commercial building loan. Less interest long-term. More equity. Easy decision. Until she saw the transfer. She got furious. We could have gone to Hawaii with that, she snapped. We could be on a beach right now, and instead you're dumping money into some building nobody even cares about. That building brings in rent every month, I said. And every extra dollar I put in now saves us way more later. She threw her hands up. Everything is an investment to you. Because that's how you build something, I said, probably a little sharper than I should have. She stared at me like I'd just proven her point. You're always thinking about the future, she said. The business. The next deal. The next property. When do we actually live? When do I get to enjoy anything? I should have handled that better. Instead, I said, you can enjoy life with the money you earn too. Yeah, that didn't go over well. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. After that, things shifted again. She started spending more and more time at her parents' place. What used to be occasional visits turned into full evenings. Then multiple times a week. I'd get home around 6 and she'd already be gone. Sometimes she wouldn't be back until 10 or 11. When I asked about it, she got defensive. You're being controlling, she said. I'm allowed to see my family. And she was. But it didn't feel like that was the whole story. It felt like she was choosing them over us. By year 3, everything changed again. One day she came home and casually said she quit her job. Just like that. It was too stressful, she said. And the pay wasn't worth it. I asked what her plan was. I'll figure it out, she said. For 6 months she didn't work. At all. Her days were shopping, lunches, spa appointments, or going to her parents' house. Meanwhile, I was covering everything: mortgage, utilities, groceries, her car, insurance, all of it. I brought it up a few times. It never went well. I'm taking care of the house, she said. Which wasn't exactly true. You always say we should spend more time together, she added once. Well, now I'm available. But she wasn't. Not really. There was always something else. A trip. A lunch. An event. Her mom needed help with something. A friend had something going on. It was always something. Just rarely me. Eventually, she picked up a part-time job at a boutique owned by a friend. About 20 hours a week. It barely covered her personal expenses, but at that point, I didn't push. Honestly, I was already checking out. Years 4, 5, and 6, they kind of blurred together. We weren't really a couple anymore. More like roommates with shared bills. We'd have dinner together maybe twice a week. Most nights, we'd sit in separate rooms watching different things, barely talking unless it was about logistics, holidays, family obligations, stuff like that. The intimacy disappeared slowly. From regular, to occasional, to almost non-existent. I asked about it once. "I'm tired," she said. Or stressed. Eventually I stopped asking. And just focused on work. Because at least their effort actually meant something. I grew the business. Doubled my team. Opened a second location in a nearby town. Took on bigger contracts. I started investing more aggressively. Bought a duplex. Then a small office building. Every purchase was done carefully, through the business, documented, structured exactly the way the prenup allowed. Separate funds. Separate property. Protected. She didn't ask about any of it. Didn't seem to care. And at the time, I told myself that was a good thing. Looking back now, I think we had both already checked out. We just hadn't said it out loud yet. By year 7 we barely knew each other anymore. She'd ask, "How was work?" I'd say, "Busy," or "Good." And that was the whole conversation. She didn't know what projects I was running, how much the company had grown, or what the properties were bringing in. She never asked. I never offered. We were just coexisting. Then one night in January, everything finally caught up to us. It was freezing outside. I just wrapped up a major city contract. One of those deals that sets your whole year up. I got home around 7, exhausted, already thinking about a shower and going straight to bed. She was sitting at the kitchen table. Laptop open. Papers spread out. And something about her felt different. Nervous. But also kind of excited. "We need to talk," she said. That phrase. You hear it once and you know exactly where it's going. "Okay," I said, grabbing a glass of water. She took a breath. "I'm not happy. I haven't been for a long time. This marriage isn't working." I sat down across from her. "Honestly?" I wasn't surprised. "Yeah," I said. "I've noticed." She blinked like that wasn't the reaction she expected. "I think we should get a divorce," she added. I nodded. "All right." That threw her off even more. "That's it?" she asked. "You're okay with it?" "It's not like this came out of nowhere," I said. "We've been living like roommates for years. We don't talk. We don't spend time together. If you want out, let's just do it." For a second she looked almost disappointed. Then something shifted. She straightened up a little and I saw that small, confident smile. "Well," she said, "I already spoke to a lawyer. Just to understand my options." Of course she had. "He told me that even with the prenup, I'd still be entitled to half of everything we gained during the marriage," she continued, glancing at her laptop. "Half the appreciation of the house. Half your retirement contributions. And half the growth of your business." I leaned back slightly. "The prenup protects the business," I said. "Only the value from before we got married," she replied quickly. "Any increase during the marriage is marital property." She sounded rehearsed. "Same with the house," she went on. "And I'd likely qualify for alimony since I earn less and was basically a housewife for part of the marriage." I almost laughed at that. Housewife. But I kept my face neutral. "So you've already mapped this out," I said. "I'm not stupid," she replied. "I know my rights." "Okay," I said calmly. "Then I'll call my lawyer. We'll get the paperwork started." Now she looked confused. "Wait, don't you want to talk about this?" she asked. "Try therapy? Work on things?" I looked at her for a second. "You just said you're unhappy and want a divorce," I said. "And you already talked to a lawyer about taking half my stuff. What exactly would therapy fix?" She hesitated. "I just thought you'd fight for us," she said quietly. That almost got a reaction out of me. Almost. "I'm not going to fight for something that's already been over for years," I said. "If you want out, we do it clean." She sat there for a moment, like the scene hadn't played out the way she imagined. Then she stood up. "Fine," she said. "My lawyer will send the papers next week. You'll probably get served at work." "Good to know," I replied. She grabbed her laptop and went upstairs. A few minutes later I could hear her on the phone, probably telling her mom, maybe her friends, replaying the whole thing. How I didn't argue. Didn't beg. Didn't try. I didn't care. I had work the next day. But the next morning I did make one call. "Elliot." "Hey," I said. "Remember that prenup from a few years back?" "Of course," he said. "You still have a copy?" "Yeah. Locked away." "Good," he replied. "Send it to me. I want to go over the exact language before her lawyer starts making claims." I dropped it off at his office that afternoon. He sat there reading it, flipping through the pages slowly. I watched his expression shift. Focused, then curious, Then something else. Amusement. He looked up at me. She actually read this before signing? He asked. Not really, I said. She was on her phone the whole time. Said she just wanted to get it over with. Elliot leaned back in his chair and let out a short laugh. Well, he said, tapping the document, she's about to learn a very expensive lesson about signing things you don't read. And that's when I realized this wasn't going to go the way she thought it would. Not even close. But even now, part of me wonders, for not warning her what she was walking into? Elliot leaned back in his chair, still holding the prenup, and gave me a look I hadn't seen from him before. This is airtight, he said. Your business, the building, your house, everything is clearly defined as separate property. I didn't say anything at first. I just waited. And this clause right here, he continued, tapping the page, about business income staying separate? That's the one. That's what shuts this down. So, what does that mean? I asked, even though I already had a feeling. It means she doesn't get half, he said. She doesn't get a piece of your business, the properties, or the growth. She gets what she came in with and whatever she personally paid for. That's it. I exhaled slowly. 7 years ago I thought I was just being cautious. Now, that one decision was about to save me everything. Elliot kept going. Your retirement accounts from before the marriage are protected. Any appreciation on your assets? Also protected. Even the income you earned during the marriage is covered as long as it came through your business. And alimony? I asked. He shrugged slightly. Maybe something small and temporary. But this isn't California. Courts here don't hand out long-term support easily. Especially not when someone voluntarily leaves a stable job and lives off their spouse's income. That part hit harder than I expected. Translation? I said. We can fight this, he replied. For the first time since that conversation at the kitchen table, I felt calm. 2 days later she moved out. Packed her clothes, personal stuff, and went straight back to her parents' house. No scene. No argument. Just gone. Honestly, it made things easier. The paperwork showed up the following week just like she said it would. I got served at work. Her demands were ambitious. Half the increase in my home's value. Half the growth of my business. Half my retirement accounts. $3,000 a month in alimony for 5 years. And she wanted to keep the Lexus. The one I'd been paying for. I read through it once, then handed it to Elliot. He didn't even blink. 2 weeks later we filed our response. Which was basically, no. No to the property claims. No to the business. No to the retirement accounts. All backed by the prenup. We also added a counter. She'd be responsible for her share of any joint obligations, including the car she wanted to keep. That's when her side asked for mediation. We met downtown in a conference room in March. She walked in dressed like she was heading to an interview, perfect hair, new outfit, composed. Her mom came with her, which didn't surprise me. I showed up straight from a job site. Jeans, work shirt, boots. Didn't feel the need to play a role. Her lawyer opened strong. Expensive suit. Confident tone. My client supported her husband throughout the marriage, he said. She sacrificed her career and is entitled to half of the marital assets. Elliot didn't argue. He just slid the prenup across the table. Page 3, he said. Section 4. I watched the guy read. At first, nothing. Then his eyebrows tightened. He flipped a page. Then another. That confidence? It faded fast. Keep going, Elliot added. By the time he got to the later sections, his whole posture had changed. Can we have a moment? He asked. They stepped out of the room. Melanie looked annoyed. Her mom looked confused. I just sat there, sipping terrible conference coffee. When they came back, everything was different. My client is willing to negotiate alimony, her lawyer said carefully. No alimony, Elliot cut in immediately. She left her job by choice. She's capable of working. If she wants a certain lifestyle, she can earn it. Her mom couldn't stay quiet. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She gave up her career for this marriage. Elliot didn't even raise his voice. She left a $45,000 a year job, he said. That's not a career sacrifice, it's a personal choice. And it wasn't done to support my client's business or relocate for his work. She simply chose not to work. The lawyer pivoted. The house, he said. She's entitled to half the appreciation. No, Elliot replied. The house was purchased before the marriage with separate funds. All improvements were made using business income, which is also defined as separate under this agreement. The appreciation stays with him. There was a pause. A long one. And for the first time I saw it hit her. This wasn't going the way she thought it would. Not even close. And sitting there watching it all unfold, I couldn't tell if I felt justified, or if I'd crossed a line by letting her believe something that was never true. AITA for letting her walk into that meeting thinking she was getting half? By the time we got to mediation, it was already clear where this was heading. Elliot didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The business, he said calmly, tapping the document, is fully protected. Pre-marriage value and all growth during the marriage. It's right here. You could actually see the shift happen. Her lawyer went from confident, to uneasy, to quietly panicking. Melanie's eyes started to water. Her mom looked like she was about to explode. So, her lawyer said, tightening his jaw, what exactly is your client offering? Elliot didn't hesitate. She keeps her personal belongings. Jewelry, clothes, anything she purchased with her own income. She can keep the Lexus, if she takes over the loan. My client keeps everything else. No alimony. We split legal costs. Silence. Then, that's outrageous, her mom snapped. 7 years of marriage and she walks away with nothing? Elliot didn't even flinch. She walks away with exactly what she agreed to, he said. In an agreement your family insisted on, I might add. That one landed. Art. The mediation ended right there. No deal. Her lawyer said we'd settle it in court. Fine by me. At that point, I wasn't even stressed anymore. I just went back to work. Over the next few months, it turned into a paperwork war. Discovery phase. Her side requested everything. Financial records, property documents, account statements. We gave them everything. And that was the problem, for them. Because every single document told the same story. The business account? Separate. The commercial building? Bought before the marriage, paid through the business. The house. Purchased 2 years before I even met her. Renovations? Paid with business income, again defined as separate. Retirement accounts? Pre-marriage balances clearly documented and tracked. Elliot built it like a case study. Organized, labeled, cross-referenced. He put together this massive binder, tabs, notes, highlighted sections, all tied directly back to the prenup. There's no commingling here, he told me. Everything is traceable. That's what matters. Her lawyer kept trying to find a crack. Any crack. They argued she didn't have proper legal representation. She did. Her own attorney. Paid by her dad, sure, but still independent. That lawyer even filed a statement confirming he explained the terms and she chose to sign anyway. Then they tried duress. Didn't work. The agreement was signed months before the wedding. Not rushed. Not forced. Fully notarized. Plenty of time to walk away if she wanted. Then they tried calling it unconscionable. Basically arguing the terms were unfair. But that fell apart too. Because both sides had the same protections. Her family's wealth? Untouchable. My business and assets? Also untouchable. You can't call it one-sided when it protects both parties equally. At one point they even brought in a financial expert. The argument was that her contributions to the marriage had value. That being a spouse, maintaining the household, providing support, should count for something financially. Elliot handled that part himself. What household tasks did she perform? He asked. The expert hesitated. She contributed to the home environment. That's not what I asked, Elliot said. Did she cook? Not regularly. Clean? There was a cleaning service. Laundry? Yard work? Home maintenance? No. I just sat there listening. Because it was strange hearing your life reduced to bullet points. So what exactly did she contribute? Elliot asked. The expert shifted. Emotional support. Companionship. Elliot paused for a second. Is there a market rate for that? He asked. The room went quiet. Because at that point it didn't even feel like a legal argument anymore. It felt like something else. Something colder. More transactional than a marriage probably should ever be. And sitting there watching it all get dissected like that, I started to wonder if we'd both reduced the relationship to numbers long before the court ever did. Which makes me question. For treating the end of my marriage like a business deal, when maybe that's what it had become all along. By the time we got close to trial, her case was falling apart, and everyone knew it. Elliot told me her lawyer kept trying to salvage something. They're looking for any kind of settlement now, he said. Anything that lets her walk away with at least a win on paper. They offered to drop alimony if I paid her $20,000. Elliot said no. Then they tried again, she'd waive alimony if I gave her the Lexus outright. Elliot didn't even blink. She can keep the car, he said, but she takes over the loan. That was the pattern. Offer after offer. All smaller than the last. All getting shut down. They started this thinking it was easy money, Elliot told me. Now they're realizing they're about to lose. Badly. Meanwhile, my life actually started improving, which felt strange to admit. I was working, seeing friends more, sleeping better. I had more energy than I'd had in years. It was like this constant pressure I didn't even fully notice before was suddenly gone. Turns out, living with someone who resents you and treats you like a paycheck takes a toll. Being alone didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. Through mutual friends, I started hearing what was happening on her side. Apparently, she had been completely confident. She thought she was walking away with half of everything: house, business growth, retirement accounts, plus alimony on top of that. One friend told me she'd already been looking at apartments in nicer areas, planning furniture, talking about taking a year off to travel Europe once the settlement came through. That part stuck with me, because none of it was real. And now that reality was hitting her all at once. Her parents even hired a second lawyer to review the prenup, hoping the first one missed something. He didn't. Same conclusion. Valid. Enforceable. Solid. Game over. In June her mom called me. I almost ignored it. I probably should have. You need to be reasonable about this, she said immediately. No hello. No small talk. I already knew where this was going. She gave up 7 years of her life for you, she continued. I let out a short breath. She didn't give anything up. She chose to quit her job. She chose how she lived. She supported you. No, I cut in. She lived off me. There was a pause. You can't just leave her with nothing, she snapped. The prenup your husband insisted on says I can, I said. If that's a problem, take it up with him. Silence. Then quieter, angrier. This is cruel. It's consistent, I replied. She treated the marriage like income. That income is gone. You're bitter, she said. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just done. She started saying something else, but I didn't stick around to hear it. I hung up. Blocked her number. Blocked her dad's too. At that point there was nothing left to say. Then August came. Trial day. I took the morning off work, put on a dress shirt and slacks and showed up. She was already there, with both her parents and her lawyer. She looked different. Not confident anymore. More like someone bracing for bad news. The judge reviewed everything. The prenup. The financial records. The arguments about fairness, contributions, lifestyle. Then he looked directly at her. Did you read this prenuptial agreement before signing it? She hesitated. I glanced at it, she said quietly. Your attorney explained the terms? Yes, she admitted. But I didn't think. The judge cut in. You didn't think it would matter, he said. She didn't respond. You signed a legally binding agreement protecting your spouse's separate property, he continued. And now you're surprised that agreement is being enforced. The room went silent. And sitting there watching that moment unfold, I couldn't tell what I was feeling. Relief? Probably. Vindication? Maybe. But also something else I wasn't expecting. Because part of me kept wondering, for knowing exactly how this would play out, and never once warning her? Her lawyer tried to jump in. Your Honor, my client was young. She didn't fully understand what she was signing. The judge didn't even let him finish. She was 24, he said flatly. An adult. Educated. Represented by her own attorney. She had every opportunity to review the agreement. There was a pause. She chose not to. That was it. No dramatic speech. No drawn-out explanation. Just final. The ruling went through exactly as the prenup stated. No alimony. No split of the business. No share of the property, the accounts, or the growth. I kept everything I had built. She kept her personal belongings, and the Lexus, along with the loan attached to it. Marriage dissolved. 7 years reduced to a few signatures and a quiet decision. Afterward I saw her in the hallway. She was crying into her mom's shoulder. Her mom stared at me like I'd just ruined their lives. Her dad didn't even meet my eyes, just stood there looking like he'd swallowed something bitter. And maybe he had. Because this whole thing started with him wanting to protect family assets. I just made sure I did the same. I didn't say anything. Didn't stop. I walked out, got in my truck and went back to work. I had a job site to finish before the weekend. The divorce was finalized a month later. And just like that, it was over. 7 years of marriage, and I walked away with exactly what I came in with. My business, my properties, my future. Intact. Word spread pretty quickly. Some people were shocked she didn't get anything. A few thought I was cold about it, but the people who actually knew what things were like behind closed doors, they understood. Marcus, the same friend whose wedding we met at, called me. "You good?" he asked. "Better than I've been in years," I told him. And I meant it. He hesitated, then said, "She's been telling people you screwed her over." I shrugged, even though he couldn't see me. "She can say whatever she wants," I said. "The paperwork says what actually happened." He was quiet for a second. "Honestly," he added, "I always thought she was more interested in what you had than who you were." That one stuck. Because deep down, I'd felt it too. I just ignored it. From what I heard later, she moved back in with her parents. The boutique job didn't last. She was struggling to find something that could support her on her own. And she was still angry. Telling anyone who would listen that I wasted 7 years of her life and left her with nothing. Maybe that's how she sees it. But from where I'm standing, I didn't take anything from her. I just refused to give away what I built. Still, I can't shake one thought. I knew exactly what that prenup meant. She didn't, and I let her sign it anyway. So, for letting my wife find out in court that she was never getting half of my money?